Good morning, 8-3. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Mr. Brown here. Tuesday morning, May 12th. This is the second day that we're working on chapter 2 of our novel Night by Elie Wiesel, his memoir. And we are just going to jump right into chapter 2. We're going to do a little bit of analysis and we're going to try to, we'll attempt to answer at least three of the questions in our guided discussion questions on chapter 2. So let me just dive right in. I am going to go to classwork and open up. You can see at the top there we have our novel Night. So you might want to stop the video now if you'd like to follow along. And I believe we can go to we can go to page 23 of our novel, which is where chapter 2 starts. So I'm just going to, you can stop the video now and catch up with me, okay? I am going to do a search for page 22. You might recall that chapter 1 introduced us to Moshe the Beadle, to Elie himself, to his family, his father, sisters, the Germans coming, the Gestapo officers coming. Chapter 1 ends with, you can see here on the page, actually, two Gestapo officers strolled down the length of the platform. They were all smiles, all things considered. It had gone very smoothly. A prolonged whistle pierced the air. The wheels began to grind. We were on our way. So they're in the train on their way to a concentration camp, although they don't know it yet. They were all smiles, it says. So they don't quite know what they're in for. So that's creating a sort of dramatic tension. And you might argue irony as well, something we learned in class this year, the ironic sort of attitude of being all smiles, yet they're going to something that's obviously going to be horrific for them. So chapter 2 starts with lying down was not an option, nor could we all sit down. They're on the train on their way to a concentration camp. Let's go to our questions. Okay, so I've got questions here. I'm in the Night chapter 2 questions and dehumanization graphic. You should have finished that, the graphic organizer on dehumanization, which is the act of degrading people with respect to their best qualities, depriving them of their individuality, their civility, their compassion, their very sort of ability to be human, takes it away from them. Think slavery in the United States and things like that. So you did the human qualities and acts of dehumanization. What I am going to concentrate on is our questions on the second page, reading questions, okay? So we're on chapter 2, and our first question was, let's see, chapter 2 here on the second page. Let me go up a tiny bit. Reading chapter 2. Okay, so number 1 says, what does the German officer say will happen now if anyone escapes from the train car? How is this different from the earlier threat, and why is this significant? Okay, so a two-part question asking about what the German officer says will happen if they try to escape, and how is it different from a threat earlier than that. Okay, so let's go to the text, and we can look down and we can find, let's see, a German officer. Okay, I'm on page 23 now, page 23. Chapter 2. A German officer stepped in accompanied by a Hungarian lieutenant, acting as his interpreter. It says, from this moment on, you are under the authority of the German army. Anyone who still owns gold, silver, or watches must hand them over now. Anyone who will have been found to have kept any of these will be shot on the spot. Secondly, anyone who is ill should report to the hospital car. That's all. The German officer then goes on to say, you can read it here with me, there are 80 of you in the car, the German officer added, and if anyone goes missing, you will all be shot like dogs. Okay, let's go back to our question here. What does the German officer say will happen if anyone escapes from the train car? Okay, we could answer it this way. The German officer says in the text, if anyone goes missing, you will all be shot like dogs. Okay, that's right there in the text. Okay, that if missing. Obviously, missing here is a way of just essentially saying if you try to escape. He doesn't say escape outright. So we've answered the question. We've actually restated it, answered it, and we've even already quoted from the text, cited evidence. Okay, so this quote shows that all the people in the car will be in trouble. Also, comparing them to dogs is further proof he isn't dehumanizing them by comparing them to animals that can be shot. Again, our first page on this document was all about dehumanization, taking away someone's humanity. Okay, so we can tie that together with that one. Before this, okay, so the second question was, how is this different from the earlier threat and why is it significant? Okay, if we go back to the text, before that, he talks about, let's see, he goes and he talks about anyone who still owns gold, silver, or watches must hand them over now. Anyone who will be found to have kept them, any of these will be shot on the spot. So we can answer the second part of our question by saying before this, meaning before the threat of shooting them if they escape, he says the officer tells them they must hand over, quote, gold, silver, or watches. If they do not hand them over, they will be shot. This is significant because it shows they no longer own their possessions and is more proof of dehumanization. Okay, so we've gone back to the earlier threat, but we've created a sort of a tie with we've tied it up with the idea of shooting them if they escape. Also, they have to hand over their belongings. Okay, and this is further proof of dehumanization, and that's what makes that significant. So they can lose their things and they can lose their lives. Okay, so let's move on to number two. There is a character here that, well, I should say character, someone else that's introduced in chapter two here, Miss Schachter. Okay, what is it that Miss Schachter screams out in the night? Second part of the question, how is this an example of foreshadowing? Foreshadowing, obviously, something in a text that sort of hints at what will happen later on. Okay, I used as an example before, a character in a book whose plant dies. Maybe something bad is going to happen to them, something like that. So it's a foreshadowing. It's a telling of something else that's going to happen in the book later on. So let's go back to the text. Okay, so we've got there was a woman among us, a certain Miss Schachter. She was in her 50s, and her 10-year-old son was with her, crouched in a corner. Her husband and two older sons had been deported with the first transport by mistake. The separation had totally shattered her. Okay, let me go down a little bit more. Miss Schachter had lost her mind. On the first day of the journey, she had already begun to moan. She kept asking why she had been separated from her family, so you can see that she's becoming very hysterical. So on the third night, as we were sleeping, some of us sitting, huddled against each other, some of us standing, a piercing cry broke the silence. Fire! I see a fire! I see a fire! As we go on to page 25, there was a moment of panic. Who had screamed? It was Miss Schachter. Standing in the middle of the car, in the faint light filtering through the windows, she looked like a withered tree in a field of wheat. Okay, a nice simile there. She was howling, pointing through the window. Look at this fire, this terrible fire. Have mercy on me. Some pressed against the bars to see. There was nothing, only the darkness of night. So there's no actual fire, but it must mean something. So let's go back to our question. What is it that Miss Schachter screams out in the night? This is easy. Miss Schachter begins to lose her mind. In the text, it states, Miss Schachter screamed out, look at this fire, this terrible fire. Have mercy on me. Okay, now we can explain the quote. By Miss Schachter screaming these words in her dream, it foreshadows the arrival of the Jews in Birkenau, where the bodies of the prisoners are being burned in fires. So there's our foreshadowing. Her terror foreshadows the horrible treatment and destruction to come from this dehumanization. So what we've done there is we've answered the question, what she screamed out in the night. We took it right from the book, what she screamed out. And then we've explained that by her screaming these, even though there is no fire there, it is just sort of a foreshadowing of the terrible, the destruction and horrible treatment that is coming their way in the book. Okay, so we can sort of guess that that's going to happen in the book because we know that these concentration camps were not good for the Jews. And of course, as you go on with the chapter, you'll see that this actually turns out to be profound, which is a nice segue to our next question that contains the word profound in it. What affects, let me go back up to number 3. What affects Ellie more profoundly than Madame Schachter's screams? Okay, so what affects? What What touches him more? What does he feel even more profoundly? The word profoundly there, okay, I've looked that up. The word profound is means a state or quality or emotion that's very great or intense. Okay, so some similes are like intensity, extreme, heartfelt. So it's asking what is affects Ellie more intensely uh, than Madame Schechter screams, and why do you think this is worse? Okay, so obviously it's asking what touches Ellie more intensely than the screams, and then your opinion, why do you think this might be worse? Okay, so if we go to the text, we were talking about how she screams that there's fire, although there's nothing there. If we go down a little bit to here, uh, they're saying there's quotes here. She is mad, poor woman. Someone had placed a damp rag on her forehead, but she nevertheless continued to scream. Fire! I see a fire. Her little boy was crying, clinging to her skirt, trying to hold her hand. It's nothing, mother. There's nothing there. Please sit down. He pained me even more than did his mother's cries. Okay, so if we go back to our question, the fact that Ellie is saying that he was pained even more, obviously that this upset him even more than the mother. It pained him more than her cries. He says it himself, so we can answer the question. It seems Ellie is more upset about her son being so scared for his mother. The text states, quote, he pained me even more than did his mother's cries, right from the text. We get that he, the little boy, pained Ellie even more than what was his mother was going through. Now, my opinion is, I say here, this might be considered worse because some people may feel a little boy should not have to witness his mother being so upset. It could be argued the little boy is more scared than the mother. Okay, you might have your own opinion on that. Certainly, I want you to express that in your answer. Okay, so that's three questions answered. Of course, I'm going to let you continue with number four. What do the people do to silence Miss Schechter? Okay, so again, continue on with the text, and it should be in order. You'll be able to answer these in order. So what do they do to silence her, and what does this suggest about human nature? Okay, so a two-part to that question. Where does the train stop? Simple question, but you might want to quote the text just to make your answer that much more efficient and clear. Number six, what news is given to the people by the Jews who returned with water? Number seven, much like number five, what what is Birkenau? Explain what it is. Cite text to help your answer. And then number eight ends the chapter with what sight greets the Jews in the night at Birkenau. With number eight, keep in mind the foreshadowing of Miss Schachter's screams. Okay, that should help you. Okay, chapter two is very short, as you know. I think it's just, I do believe it's page 23 to page 28. So here we're already on page 25, 26, 27, and then 28 ends the chapter, and you can answer those four remaining questions. Okay, I certainly hope this helps. Uh, do as well as you can, answer very succinctly and as well as you can, and I'm here for any help. Okay, good luck, 8-3. Thank you. Bye bye.